Welcome back and welcome in, college football fans, to the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, the channel created by the college football fan for you, the college football fan, the only channel where we examine, discuss, celebrate, and honor all things college football across the entire college football landscape. I'm your usual host, Blair Parks. It's great to be back with you. Once again, thank you for all that you have done or will continue to do for the channel up to this point or moving forward. I ask that you please like, share, subscribe, comment each and every episode. If this is your first time with me, I always welcome, ask for, even beg to want to hear from you, my fellow college football brothers and sisters. So please get involved, comment below, light up that comment section, and I promise I will get back to each and every one of you much sooner than later, directly via those comments. I can't wait to hear from you. Please get involved, exercise your college football right, let your voice be heard, because after all, these episodes are fueled by you, the college football fan, and without your support, none of this would be possible. And what a great blessing it is for me to be here with you on the weekly, sharing my love for all things college football. All right, happy Monday morning to you and yours. It's Monday morning, November 11th. I hope you all had an excellent weekend. I hope your team of fandom came out on top. They were victorious. As far as my Iowa Hawkeyes go, well, it didn't really go quite to plan. The historic, the cathedral, the hallowed ground of the Rose Bowl out in Pasadena continues to be a house of horrors for the Hawkeyes. But I'm not going to dive into that too much this morning. Actually, not at all, because what I've got on tap for you, this is my projected, updated college football playoff rankings. Now, this is the second week that on the eve of those official release of those playoff rankings, which will happen tomorrow, the 12th, I believe at 7:30 Central Time on ESPN. I always like to share with you, the college football fan, if I was in that room, if I was in the room where it happens, the room where it happens, the room where it happens, if I was on that committee and it was up to me to break a tie, this following list is how I would rank the teams, and based on the criteria and the metrics that I would use, the eye test goes into it. How good or bad have these teams looked on the field? Strength of schedule, definitely a big one. Who have these teams played? Who have they defeated? Who have they lost to? And then further down the road, let's say it's a good win. Well, who else has that potential good victory? Who has that team played? Or if it's a bad loss, who else has that team lost to? And the last one that goes into it definitely is in certain scenarios, if there is a head-to-head tie where two teams met up, and I always in most instances will give the final nod to the team who came out on top. Now, let's say there's a 4-loss team compared to a 1-loss team. I may not be able to be that forgiving and that gracious, just telling you. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. I will give you my top 12 plus 2. I will share with you my first and second teams out. And I'm also going to let you know, to remind you, as far as my top 12, what are their good wins, maybe good losses. And I thought this week I would also go ahead and include strength of schedule. I checked it first thing this morning, and I wanted to add that to this discussion to see, okay, does this team deserve to be higher or lower? Are they perfect, right on point, or should they not even be on this list? All right. And for some of you, I don't want to, no disrespect, all right? Because remember, you may not agree with my rankings, but remember, there's still plenty of football to be played. Your team of fandom, if they're on this list or just slightly off, they'll have plenty of opportunity still to either play their way up or play their way down and ultimately off this list. So don't don't shoot the messenger, all right? So please get involved, comment, like, share, rate, subscribe. Can't wait to hear from you. All right. And also, I will tell you, compared to my last week's list, if the teams on here have either moved up or moved down or just stayed status quo where they were. All right, so let's go and go through my top 4. All right, these would be the top 4 would be the winners of the Power 4 conferences who would ultimately get a first round bye for this expanded 12-team college football playoff, the inaugural season of this 12-team. I'm so excited about it. So number 1, where they were last week, I've got the Oregon Ducks, who are still perfect, 10-0 on the season. Big wins. They have a big non-conference victory against Boise State, and also that big one in Big Ten Conference play, a home victory against Ohio State by 1 point. So no movement there. Number 2, where I had them last week, and I know some of you maybe disagreed with it, but I call it like I see it. I'm going with the BYU Cougars, who I project to win the Big 12 Conference Championship. Now, remember, I do a little bit of forecasting with these, but I try not to do a lot of forecasting as well. So BYU sitting there undefeated, 9-0. Big win over the weekend at their arch rival, Utah, and this year's edition of the Civil War, or the Holy War, I'm sorry. I do my own stunts here, my own... I do my own acting here on the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. I don't do any retakes or edits or dress rehearsals because all that sounds like work, and this is a straight up hobby. So let's go and hit rewind. So big win over the weekend for BYU at their in-state arch rival Utah in the Holy War. 9-0 BYU, their big victory on the season, a 3-point win at SMU down in the Big D, Dallas. And at home, they absolutely destroyed a ranked Kansas State team. Number 3, now, this is something. I have them jumping way up. Number 3, who I have projected winning the SEC title as of now, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Last week, I did not have them in my top 12 plus 2, so what a big jump up for the Crimson Tide after absolutely destroying LSU on Saturday night down in Baton Rouge inside Death Valley. Man, just absolutely ran away and ran all over, literally, the LSU Tigers. Alabama currently is 7-2. Big wins. They have 2 of them. They have a win. They held off a huge late second half comeback attempt by Georgia, so they have a victory over the Georgia Bulldogs and over the weekend at LSU. Now, their 2 losses, all right? Now, it's up to you. Now, this is something else that I failed to mention that I look at. A big win should not carry as much weight as a bad loss. That's just how I look at things. I mean, for good wins, you want to be rewarded, but one can't outweigh the other. I mean, to me, what matters more compared to a great win is a terrible or bad loss. Okay, all right? Because great teams should not have bad losses. They shouldn't. An okay loss is one thing, but a bad loss, And Alabama, of their 2 losses, one is not a bad loss at Tennessee, but the other one, they lost at Vanderbilt, who, hey, I'm all about Diego Pavia and the resurgence of the Commodores. It's been fun to watch, but hey, they finally have come back down to earth. They lost again over the weekend. So this Vanderbilt team, definitely much better than Vanderbilt teams of recent past and history, but they are not a world beater. They are going to finish probably... I'd say just in the upper half of the SEC. So that loss continues, in my mind, to bring the Crimson Tide down a little bit. But still, as of right now, after that big win, I have them getting to and winning the SEC. Number 4, big time move up this week as well. After what we saw happen to Miami, I have SMU, the Mustangs, who are currently 8-1, up 6 spots from my list last week. I did have them as one of the at-large teams. With Clemson's loss 2 weeks ago, with Miami's loss at Georgia Tech Saturday, finally with SMU defeating Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago, they find themselves atop the ACC, undefeated in ACC conference play. They have good victories against the aforementioned Pitt Panthers and a road victory at Louisville, who a couple weeks ago went to Clemson and knocked off the Tigers. Now, their only loss, something I already mentioned, a hard-fought game at home. They lost in Dallas against BYU by 3 points. And that was really, I remember watching that game. SMU settled for 5 field goals, and they had 2 turnovers deep in the red zone of BYU. So very easily could have turned out differently. So I project SMU at this point to win the ACC. So that's my top 4 right now. Let's move on to my at-large bids. First, out of the Big Ten, where they were last week, I've got Ohio State, currently 8-1. They have that good victory at Penn State by 7, and that loss, which is not a bad loss at all, at Oregon, number 1 by 1 point. Next, number 6, they're hanging on. I have them in this spot last week, so maintaining the 6th spot, the second at large, the Tennessee Volunteers, currently 8-1 overall. They've got that really good big win at home against Alabama, and that loss of theirs is at Arkansas. That's not a terrible loss. I would put that more in the bad loss category, but that Arkansas team, I think, is a little bit better than their record shows. But I've got Tennessee right there. I mean, because they have that big victory over Bama. And there's a big game coming up this weekend when it's an Elam game when Tennessee takes on Georgia down in Athens between the hedges. Can't wait to watch that one. And really, for any of these teams on this list, this time of year, each and every game is a playoff elimination game. It just is. That's the reality of this. All right, so moving on to number 7. I had them there last week. I've got them maintaining 7, and this is where I think some of you were a little bit surprised, but I'm sorry, you shouldn't be. At number 7, I've got from the Big Ten, the Indiana Hoosiers, sitting there at 10-0. Yes, it is basketball season now, but this is the undefeated, highly ranked Indiana Hoosier football program, who over the weekend defeated Michigan at home in a close contest by 5. And while doing that, they improved and captured their first 10-win season ever in program history. And as far as Indiana's wins, obviously no losses. And I'm going to circle back to this at the end of after I go through this list. Their best win may have come over the weekend against Michigan. Now, Indiana, throughout the entire year, has absolutely flexed like no one else. They have looked like the most overwhelming, the most consistent, balanced, best team in the nation. I think even still with this close victory over the weekend, I think their margin of victory is 17.5 points. They have absolutely mauled everybody on their schedule, and they've taken care of business. Just like what Michigan did last year at this time when people were saying, oh, their schedule is weak, they've played nobody. But look what they did. They went on to win the Natty title. It was never really in doubt. They were the best team last year. I'm not saying Indiana's the best team in the nation, but they have looked like it more than anybody else this year, because each one of the teams on this list, they've looked a little bit inconsistent at times. They just have. All right? And Indiana's got a huge opportunity in 2 weeks off of a bye to put up or shut up when they travel north to take on, actually they travel east, sorry, my geography lessons there, east to take on mighty Ohio State and Columbus inside the Horseshoe. Can't wait for that matchup here in 2 weeks. Next, number 8. Down 5 spots following the absolute shellacking they took over the weekend. I've got the Georgia Bulldogs at number 8. 7-2 overall is Georgia. They do have a good win on the road at Texas. And I'm going to talk more about Texas here in a little bit. But they have 2 losses. They lost at Alabama, as I previously mentioned. And over the weekend, they got absolutely used and abused by Ole Miss down in Oxford. Lane Kiffin finally gets that big victory over a top 5 opponent. So I've got the Bulldogs down 5 spots at number 8, but still at this point they still have a chance to get to that SEC title game. And what a race we have now in the SEC. Really, really compelling, good stuff. Number 9. Now, I know some of you aren't going to like this, and I apologize. I'll make a further case later. But coming in at number 9, down 1 spot from last week, even though they won, they took care of business at home. I've got the Texas Longhorns from the SEC, currently 8-1 overall. They do have that. Now, this is the thing. It's hard for me to find a good victory for Texas. Yes, Indiana doesn't really have a good victory. I understand that. And Texas absolutely smoked Michigan earlier this year up in the Big House, which I said Indiana's best win might be over the weekend against Michigan. But Texas, their best win might be at Vanderbilt by 3 points. And that victory, is not looking as good now because I think they've lost. They're going to keep getting some losses. So that's their best win. They haven't really beaten anyone, and they did lose at home against Georgia. That game was not as close as the scoreboard indicated. It was an absolutely one-sided game. They had no shot to beat Georgia at home. And I'll get back to why I think Texas is kind of fool's gold. All right? So Texas is number 9. Number 10, up 2 spots from last week's list. I've got to roll with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They're 8-1. They have a big win on the season, one of the biggest and most impressive road victories all year. They won week 1 at Texas A&M and also won at home against Louisville. But they have one of the worst, if not the worst, home loss all season by a upper echelon ranked team. That loss at home against Northern Illinois University, the world beaters out of the MAC. I love me some Huskies. Go NIU. So that's been the knock on Notre Dame is they don't really have a lot of quality wins, and their strength of schedule, which I'll get to here in a little bit, is a little bit soft. Not exactly Charmin soft, but it's soft. And their schedule not really Notre Dame like from what we're used to. And with that bad loss against NIU, this is why some people are saying they don't deserve to even be in the mentioned in the race for the college football playoff. But they put up a 50-burger over the weekend against Florida State, which, yes, Florida State, one of the biggest disappointments this season in college football. But still, if you watch Notre Dame play, they are a good football team. Riley Leonard, the quarterback transfer from Duke's, got them rolling, and their defense is stout, all right? They are one of the 12 best teams in the nation. Just watch them, and you will be a believer, all right? But Notre Dame, there's zero room for error because they don't have that conference championship game. So if they happen to stumble once down the line in the season, they do play against highly ranked and undefeated Army. Go Cadets. But I think that last game of the year, traveling out west to take on USC in the Coliseum, where that might be a game that USC needs that 6th victory to get to bowl eligibility, that's going to be a big-time test for Notre Dame. So they must take care of their business, or else I think with one loss, they are off this list. All right? Next, number 11, down 2 spots from last week, even though they won over the weekend. I've got the Penn State Nittany Lions out of the Big Ten Conference, Penn State currently 8-1. Their best win might be at home against Illinois and maybe week 1 at West Virginia when they absolutely looked the part. Their one loss, not a bad loss at all, at home against Ohio State by, I believe, a touchdown. So no, Penn State also is kind of in that discussion of, well, who have you really defeated? All right. But their strength of schedule is not bad, and I'll get to that here lastly when I circle back around. So that's it. So for number 12, the last one standing, down one spot from last week, I've got the group of 5 champion, the highest ranked conference champ. That is the Boise State Broncos. I have them down one spot, even though they won over the weekend, but only won by a touchdown at home against Nevada on the Blue Smurf turf. They do have a good victory, Boise State over highly ranked Washington State, the Cougars at home, and also against UNLV, a solid team in the Mountain West. And their only loss was at Oregon early in non-conference by 3. So Boise State still in the college football playoff as of now. Just keep taking care of your business, and you're going to be there. All right. So there's my top 12. Now let me give you my first 2 teams out. My first team out, exactly where I had them last week. I've got the Texas A&M Aggies. They've got, a good victory over Missouri, a good victory over LSU, but still, they need to do a little bit more, but they're going to have a huge opportunity. The last game of the year, Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, they host their old arch rival, their nemesis, Big Brother. Texas comes to Kyle Field. I can't wait for that. And if they happen to keep winning until then and defeat Texas, you absolutely are going to see them hop up this list and then see Texas fall. And my second team out, and this was difficult. All right, I really had to ponder this, look inward, look at all of my metrics, look at strength of schedule, how have they looked, and I had to roll with the Miami Hurricanes, down 9 spots from last week's list. Over the weekend, their defense, or lack of defense, I should say, finally caught up to them. They lost down in Hotlanta against Georgia Tech. Definitely, they controlled the lines of scrimmage. All year, we've seen Cam Ward, legit Heisman Trophy finalist. This team is going to put up points aplenty. They can outscore anybody in the nation, but their defense continues to just be Charmin soft, and it finally cost them. But I still believe that if they're able to win out, reach the ACC title game, knock off SMU, then absolutely they will then earn a college football playoff berth. But if some other teams in front of them happen to fall off, get a few more losses, even maybe a loss against SMU in the ACC championship game might be able to get them to sneak in the back door potentially. So that's my top 12 plus 2. Now, the best of the rest, I thought I'd go ahead and just give you my 6 next best teams just to round out the top 20. I think next would be Ole Miss, back in the discussion after that big-time win against Georgia over the weekend. 2 losses for the Rebels. One of those at home against Kentucky. Bad loss. That's why I don't have them on my top 12 plus 2 quite yet. But if they keep winning, they can find themselves on my official list. Followed by Army, undefeated. One of, if not the best story in college football this season. Come on, Cadets, keep winning. And it's not too far-fetched to maybe we end up seeing Army in the college football playoff. If they go undefeated, defeat Notre Dame in a couple weeks, they will absolutely be there. There's no doubt about it. Then I have the Missouri Tigers next, followed by the Kansas State Wildcats right behind them because they have that tiebreaker head-to-head. I've got Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes, and I've got to give much credit and props to Coach Dion and his boys there in Boulder. I thought they wouldn't even get bowl eligible, but here they find themselves in the driver's seat to get to the Big 12 conference title game. Just win out, take care of business, and they're going to be there. And then my top 20 team, I've got my last one, number 20, the Washington State Cougars, who have a good victory this year against Washington, and that only loss against Boise State, as I mentioned. So let me know what you think about my list. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below. Do you agree or disagree with my assessment and my opinion, my hot takes? Let me know. Do you think this team should be higher, this team lower, this team shouldn't even be included in the race? I want to hear from you. Let me know. Can't wait to hear from you. Let's just keep it adult-like, all right? We all know, how to speak, what we can and can't say and do, so let's just be adults about it. All right, now, getting back to something I wanted to bring in the mix, my strength of schedule, all right? And some of these are pretty telling, all right? And I'm going to try not to sound like a hypocrite, but I'm going to make my best arguments that I can. Oregon, number 1, strength of schedule, solid, 49. And that's strength of schedules up to this point. I could have maybe included strength of schedule versus teams remaining, but I didn't do that this week. So Oregon, 49. BYU, 54. I know, not the best number, my number 2 rank, but strength of schedule of 54. Number 3, Alabama, good strength of schedule right there, just outside the top 10 at 11. Number 4, SMU, strength of schedule of 81. But then again, those good victories against Pitt and Louisville with that one really, really good loss, that's okay for SMU, all right? I'm not going to penalize them that much. Ohio State, my number 5 team, strength of schedule 26. That's solid. Tennessee, my number 6 team, strength of schedule 35. No problems there at all. Indiana, number 7. Let me say this. Strength of schedule to this point of triple digits, 100. All right, I get it. That's why some of you are going to say they don't deserve to be this high. They don't deserve to even be on this list in general. But remember, they have absolutely looked like the best team from week 1 to week 11. All right, they have. They've been the most consistent. They look like winners. The best team is there in Bloomington via the eye test, and that alone. And like I said, they're going to have a big opportunity to prove it when they go up to Columbus to take on Ohio State in 2 weeks. Number 8, Georgia, the strength of schedule, numero uno. You can't get any better than that, so I've got them there, number 8, Georgia, at strength of schedule 1. Number 9, Texas. Strength of schedule is 55. It's worse than BYU's. Yes, it's not as bad as Indiana's, but they still haven't beaten anyone. And I don't know why we're supposed to continue to kiss Texas's ass, all right? They're going to be ranked in the top 5. In the AP poll they are, but I don't know how good this team is. I don't care how good you're supposed to be. Preseason rankings and hype, that don't mean squat at this time in the year. It doesn't. Okay, I don't care how good you were supposed to be. I don't care the last name of your backup quarterback. But I think Texas, to me, because they have one loss, Indiana doesn't at this point. It could all change, remember? Just take it easy. I don't want to see any, you Texas fans, just relax, take a deep breath. But between those two teams, I think Texas is the least deserving to be on this list. If there was only room for one of them, it would have to be Indiana over UT because of that one loss that Texas has. Sorry. All right, continuing, Notre Dame, strength of schedule, 73, but that is going to improve a little bit. Number 11, Penn State, which, on paper, you could say, well, they don't really have a great victory, but strength of schedule of 30, good, got no gripe there. And Boise State, my number 12, ranking, my last at large, the group of 5 champion, strength of schedule of 68. So the strength of schedule argument, that has to be looked at. Okay, it does. All right. But that being said, I think the only conference that might get a team in with 3 losses is going to be the SEC. Let's say Alabama gets to the SEC title game and loses, or let's say Texas does the same. So you get to the conference championship game, you have 3 losses. Maybe they still get in to be rewarded for getting to the conference title game, but that's the only scenario that I see. Anybody who has 3 losses and doesn't get to the title game, you're not getting in. You're just not, okay? And even then, quite frankly, let's say Indiana loses at Ohio State, right? They have 1 loss on the season, and let's say maybe Colorado, Kansas State, Iowa State. I mean, the Big 12 has been turned completely upside down. Let's say whoever meets BYU in the Big 12 title game, let's say they knock off the Cougars. Are you really going to leave out a 1-loss at-large BYU team? Are you going to take a 3-loss team over them? I don't think so. Just like Indiana, okay? You can't say, well, strength of schedule at that point. 3 losses compared to 1, you can't do that. It's not going to happen. If it's 2 losses compared to 1, different story, okay? But all BYU and Indiana have to do is just take care of business. They can afford maybe 1 loss, but that's it, all right? But teams who I believe on my list this week who can afford a loss, definitely Notre Dame. I think Penn State could be in really trouble if they lose another game down the stretch. Boise State, because Army is right there closing that gap. Georgia, who already has 2 losses, they can't afford another loss. SMU, potentially, but I think 1 loss, but get to the AC title game, win it, you're in, nothing to worry about. And maybe even Alabama. All right, so there's a few teams here I'll put it this way. I'll clean it up and refrain it. There's a few teams on the teams that I just mentioned on this list cannot afford another loss prior to conference championship weekend. That's probably more clear. All right, guys, that's my episode for this week, my updated college football playoff rankings, how I see them in my beautiful mind. Tune in tomorrow night. We'll kind of compare, contrast, see how my list looks to the so-called experts list. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, light those comments up, smash that button, subscribe, get notifications. Thank you for all you've done. I can't express to you more how the amount of gratitude I have for each and every one of you who help me, who keep me going, who support the channel. A little Sammy Sosa style love. That's right for you. I appreciate it. Now, I will be back later this week on Thursday, probably late morning, early afternoon, with my Week 12 preview and picks episode. So be looking for me there. So until then, enjoy the rest of your work week or your school week. Be safe, be responsible. Much love, peace, prosperity. So until then, take care. From the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, go Hawks. Bye-bye.